The fluorescent lights of Iron Valley Gym buzzed overhead as Marcus wheeled his daughter through the front entrance. At 6 years old, Emma sat proudly in her wheelchair, her Superman backpack bouncing against the back of her seat. Marcus had saved for 3 months to afford the family membership, hoping the gym's childcare area would give him a place to work out while Emma stayed safe nearby. The gym smelled like rubber mats and determination. Marcus had always loved that smell. Before Emma's mother left them 2 years ago, before the accident that put Emma in the wheelchair, before his construction job downsized him to part-time hours, Marcus had been a college athlete, football scholarship, conference champion. That version of himself felt like a distant memory now. He approached the front desk where a young woman with a high ponytail barely looked up from her phone. "Can I help you?" she said flatly. "Hi, I'm Marcus Chen. I signed up for the family membership online. This is my daughter Emma. I was told there's a supervised kids area where she could stay while I work out." The woman's eyes flicked to Emma's wheelchair, then back to her screen. "Yeah, about that. Our kids zone isn't really set up for special needs. It's mostly for kids who can, move around independently." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "She doesn't have special needs. She just uses a wheelchair. Your website said all children welcome." Before the receptionist could respond, a tall man in an expensive tracksuit emerged from the manager's office. His name tag read Derek Morrison, general manager. Everything about him screamed money, from his designer sneakers to his perfectly gelled hair. "Is there a problem?" Morrison asked, but his tone suggested he already knew the answer and didn't care. Marcus explained the situation again, keeping his voice steady despite the frustration building in his chest. Emma sat quietly, her small hands gripping the armrests of her wheelchair. She had learned too young how to make herself invisible during these conversations. Morrison crossed his arms. "Look, I understand your situation, but we have liability concerns. Our facility caters to serious athletes. We've got professional trainers here, competitive bodybuilders, even some local celebrities. This isn't really a family-friendly environment. Maybe you should try the YMCA. They're better equipped for this sort of thing." This sort of thing. The words hung in the air like a slap. "I paid for a full-year membership," Marcus said, his voice lower now, dangerous. "Your website shows families working out together. There's nothing in your terms about excluding children with disabilities." Morrison's smile was pure condescension. "I'll process your refund, but I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You're disrupting other members." Marcus looked around. The gym was nearly empty. An older man on a treadmill. 2 women by the weight rack. Nobody was paying them any attention except for 3 men who had just walked in behind them. Leather vests over muscular frames, tattoos covering their arms. The tallest of the 3, a man with silver hair and a scar across his left eyebrow, stepped forward. "We got a problem here?" he asked. Morrison's demeanor shifted instantly. "No problem, Mr. Russo. Just handling a customer service issue." The man called Russo looked at Marcus, then at Emma, then back at Morrison. "Looks to me like you're refusing service to a paying member because his kid uses a wheelchair. That's what I'm seeing." Morrison's face flushed. "That's not what this is about. We have concerns about our facility's capabilities to accommodate." "Save it," Russo interrupted. His voice was calm but carried weight. "I've been coming to this gym for 15 years. I've seen you accommodate plenty of people. Rich people. Connected people. Seems like the only capability issue here is your capability to show some basic human decency." The other 2 men flanked Russo, silent but present. Their patches read Hell's Angels Motorcycle Club, East Coast Chapter. Marcus felt Emma's hand slip into his. She whispered, "Dad, can we just go?" Morrison looked genuinely nervous now. "Mr. Russo, I assure you this is a misunderstanding. Here's what's going to happen," Russo said. "This man and his daughter are going to use their membership. You're going to make sure that kids' area is wheelchair accessible. And you're going to apologize." Morrison's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "I don't think." Now, Russo added quietly. The apology came out stiff and insincere, but it came. Marcus nodded slowly, uncertain what had just happened. Morrison retreated to his office like a scolded child. Russo turned to Marcus and extended his hand. Tony Russo, sorry you had to deal with that nonsense. Marcus shook his hand, still processing. Marcus Chin, I appreciate the backup, but you didn't have to. Yeah, I did, Tony said. He knelt down to Emma's level. What's your name, kiddo? Emma, she said softly. Well, Emma, your dad looks like he could use a good workout. How about we make sure he gets one? Over the next 3 weeks, Marcus tried to ignore the stares. Morrison had reluctantly arranged a small corner in the kids' area with accessible toys for Emma, but the damage was done. Every time Marcus walked through those doors, he felt eyes on him. Judgment, pity, resentment. The worst came from Bradley Winchester, a trust fund bodybuilder who treated the gym like his personal kingdom. Bradley had overheard Tony Russo defending Marcus that first day, and he hadn't forgotten. Must be nice having bikers fight your battles, Bradley said loud enough for everyone to hear as Marcus set up at the bench press. What's next, gonna have them change your kids' diapers too? Marcus's hands tightened around the bar. Emma was 7 feet away in the kids' zone, coloring in a book. She couldn't hear, but she could sense tension. Her little shoulders had hunched forward. That's enough, Marcus said quietly. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I hurt your feelings? Bradley stepped closer, his gym crew laughing behind him. This is a serious training facility. Maybe daddy daycare isn't the right fit for you. Marcus stood up slowly. He had 4 inches and 30 pounds on Bradley, but fighting would mean losing his membership. Losing the 1 hour a day where he could pretend his life wasn't falling apart. I'm just here to work out, Marcus said evenly. Then work out somewhere else. Bradley pushed past him, deliberately knocking Marcus's water bottle to the floor. Nobody wants you here. The gym went quiet. Marcus felt his face burning. He could hear Emma's crayons stop moving. She was watching now, her dark eyes wide with that look she got when kids at school were cruel. That look that said she was used to being unwanted. Marcus bent down, picked up his water bottle, and walked toward the exit. He couldn't do this anymore. Not to himself. Not to Emma. As he reached for Emma's wheelchair, the gym doors swung open. Tony Russo walked in with his 2 companions, gym bags slung over their shoulders. They were early for their usual evening session. Leaving already, Tony asked, reading Marcus's face immediately. Yeah, Marcus said. This isn't working out. Tony's eyes scanned the room and landed on Bradley, who suddenly found the weight rack fascinating. What happened? Nothing. Just not a good fit. Tony stepped closer, lowering his voice. I've been around long enough to know what nothing looks like. And this ain't it. Marcus glanced at Emma, who was watching Tony with curious eyes. The same eyes that had watched her mother pack suitcases and leave. The same eyes that had cried when doctors said she might never walk again. He couldn't drag her through another fight. Really, it's fine. We're going. Tony nodded slowly but didn't move. You know what I see when I look at you? A guy who's still standing after life knocked him down. That takes strength most of these peacocks will never understand. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. Tony pulled out his phone and made a call right there in the middle of the gym. Yeah, it's me. I need the back room cleared out by tomorrow. No, permanently. I've got a better use for it. He hung up and looked at Marcus. You ever train anyone before? Marcus blinked, confused by the sudden shift. I mean, back in college I helped some teammates with conditioning, but that was years ago. Good enough. Starting Monday, you're training me and my crew. Private sessions. Back room. We'll pay you $50 an hour, 3 sessions a week. That's $600 a month, cash. Marcus felt dizzy. $600 was groceries for 2 months. Emma's physical therapy copays. The difference between making rent on time or begging for extensions. I don't understand. Why would you? Because Morrison's an idiot and Bradley's a punk? And this gym needs someone who actually knows what hard work looks like. Tony gestured around the room. Half these guys are playing dress-up. You've been grinding. I can tell. One of Tony's companions, a stocky man with a gray beard, spoke up. Tony's got an eye for people. If he says you can train, you can train. Marcus looked at Emma. She was smiling now, the first real smile he'd seen all week. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Tony replied. and say you'll be here Monday at 6 a.m. sharp. We train hard, we train early, and we don't do excuses. For the first time in 2 years, Marcus felt something he thought he'd lost. Purpose. Yes. Yeah, I'll be here. Tony extended his hand again, and this time the handshake felt like a promise. Good. Now finish your workout. You're going to need your strength. As Tony and his crew headed to the locker room, Marcus returned to the bench press. His hands were shaking, but not from fear anymore. Bradley and his friends had disappeared. The gym suddenly felt different, lighter. Emma rolled her wheelchair closer. Dad, are you really going to be a trainer? Looks like it, sweetheart. That's so cool. She beamed at him with such pure pride that Marcus had to look away before he started crying right there in the weight room. He loaded the bar with more weight than he'd attempted in months. As he lifted, he felt eyes on him again. But this time it wasn't judgment. It was curiosity. Respect, maybe. If you're watching this and you've ever felt like you didn't belong somewhere, like the world was stacked against you, hit that subscribe button. Because this story is just getting started. And what happens next, nobody saw coming. Marcus finished his set, racked the weight, and for the first time since walking through those doors 3 weeks ago, he felt like he had a right to be there. Monday morning arrived cold and dark. Marcus had Emma at his mother's house by 5:30, then drove through empty streets to Iron Valley Gym. His hands gripped the steering wheel tight. This was real now. No turning back. Tony and 5 other Hell's Angels were already waiting in the back room when Marcus arrived. The space had been transformed overnight. New mats covered the floor. A heavy bag hung in the corner. Free weights lined the walls. Tony introduced the crew. There was Bear, the stocky man with the gray beard. Snake, tall and lean with serpent tattoos covering his neck. Diesel, who looked like he could bench press a car. Mac and Jimmy, younger prospects eager to prove themselves. All right, coach, what do we got? Tony said, arms crossed. Marcus took a breath. He'd spent all Sunday night planning a routine, then scrapping it, then planning again. These weren't college kids. These were men who'd lived hard lives. Men who commanded respect through presence alone. We start with mobility work, Marcus said, his voice finding confidence. I don't care how strong you are if you can't move right. Then we build functional strength. No bodybuilder nonsense. Real power. Bear laughed. Kids talking our language already. The next 2 hours were brutal. Marcus pushed them through exercises that exposed every weakness, every compensated movement pattern, every shortcut their bodies had learned over decades. To his shock, they took it. No complaints. No ego. They worked. By the 3rd week, word had spread through the gym. The Hell's Angels were training with the single dad. The guy Morrison had tried to throw out. Members started asking Marcus for advice. Quietly at first, then openly. Morrison watched it all from his office like a hawk circling prey. On Friday morning of the 4th week, Morrison appeared in the backroom doorway mid-session. Mr. Chun, I need to speak with you. Now. Tony stood up from his deadlifts. He's busy. This is gym business, Morrison snapped. He looked at Marcus. Your membership is being revoked. Effective immediately. The room went silent. On what grounds, Marcus asked, his heart hammering. You're operating an unauthorized personal training business on our premises. That violates multiple clauses in our facility agreement. Tony stepped between them. He's training us. We're paying him. That's allowed. Not without proper certification and insurance. Morrison produced a folder. I've documented everything. He's done here. Marcus felt the floor drop out from under him. $600 a month, gone. The respect he'd been rebuilding shattered. Emma's face flashed in his mind, asking if he was really going to be a trainer. Diesel cracked his knuckles. You really want to die on this hill, Morrison? Are you threatening me? Morrison's voice went shrill. I'll call the police right now. Tony raised a hand, stopping Diesel. No need for that. He looked at Marcus. Pack your stuff. We're leaving. What? No, I can fight this. Not here you can't, Tony said. But I know a place where you can. Tony led Marcus and the entire crew out of Iron Valley Gym while Morrison stood in the doorway looking smug. 3 motorcycles and Marcus's beat-up Honda formed a convoy through downtown. finally pulling up to a massive warehouse in the industrial district. The building looked abandoned from outside, but when Tony unlocked the heavy steel door, Marcus stepped into something else entirely. The space was enormous. Boxing rings, squat racks, rows of kettlebells and barbells, punching bags hanging from exposed beams. Natural light poured through skylights 30 feet up. "Welcome to the clubhouse," Tony said. "We've had this space for 20 years. Used it for storage mostly, some poker games. Been thinking it was time for a change." Bear walked to the center of the room, his boots echoing on the concrete floor. "We want you to run it. Turn it into a real training facility." Marcus looked around, overwhelmed. "I don't have money for rent, equipment, insurance, any of it. Already handled," Tony interrupted. "The club owns the building outright. Equipment's been donated by members over the years, we just never used it proper. Insurance we can figure out. You just need to train people." Snake leaned against a squat rack. "Real people. Not trust fund pretty boys. People who need it." Marcus felt that crack in his chest widen. Why would you do this for me?" Tony walked over to a framed photograph on the wall. It showed a young girl, maybe 8 years old, smiling on a bicycle. Similar dark hair to Emma. Similar bright eyes. "That's my daughter Sophia. She died when she was 9. Drunk driver hit her walking home from school." The room seemed to hold its breath. "After we lost her, I was angry at everything. At God. At the world. Especially at people who looked at me like I was damaged goods. Like grief made me less than." Tony turned to face Marcus. "When I saw Morrison treat you and Emma like you didn't belong, like your situation made you unworthy, it brought it all back. Nobody should feel that way, especially not a father trying his best." Marcus's throat tightened. "I'm sorry. I had no idea. You weren't supposed to." Tony's voice was steady. "But you were supposed to get a fair shot. And now you are." Mac, one of the younger prospects, spoke up. "We've already got a list of people who want to train here. Veterans, single parents, people recovering from injuries, folks who don't fit in at places like Iron Valley." Diesel grinned. "Plus, we're tired of looking soft. You made us work harder in 4 weeks than we have in 4 years." The crew laughed, and the tension broke. Marcus looked around the warehouse again. This time he didn't see an empty space. He saw potential. He saw Emma rolling her wheelchair through wide aisles. He saw people like him, people who'd been counted out, finding strength again. "So what do you say, Coach?" Tony asked. "You ready to build something real?" Marcus extended his hand. "When do we start?" "Tomorrow," Tony said, shaking firmly. "Always tomorrow." 18 months later, the warehouse had transformed into something nobody could have predicted. The sign outside read Iron Brotherhood GYM in bold letters, with a smaller line underneath, "Where everyone belongs." Marcus stood near the entrance watching the afternoon crowd. A veteran with a prosthetic leg worked with Bear on deadlifts. 2 single mothers spotted each other on bench press while their kids played in the accessible area Marcus had designed himself, Emma often leading the games from her wheelchair. Snake taught a boxing class to teenagers from the neighborhood, kids who needed somewhere to channel their anger into something productive. The waiting list had grown to over 200 names. Emma rolled up beside her father, now 8 years old and infinitely more confident than the quiet girl who'd sat in that gym 2 years ago. "Dad, Mrs. Patterson wants to know if you can fit her husband into the morning session. He just got out of rehab. Tell her yes. We'll make room." Emma nodded and wheeled away, clipboard in hand. She'd appointed herself unofficial assistant manager, and honestly, she was better at scheduling than Marcus ever was. Tony emerged from the office, phone in hand. "You're not going to believe this. That was Channel 7. They want to do a feature on the gym. Human interest story about community and second chances." Marcus shook his head, smiling. "Morrison's going to lose his mind. Already did." Tony's grin was wolfish. "Iron Valley filed for bankruptcy last month. Turns out when you build a business on exclusivity and ego, people eventually catch on." The front door opened and a nervous-looking man in his 40s stepped inside, his young son holding his hand. The boy had Down syndrome and looked terrified of the unfamiliar space. Marcus walked over immediately, kneeling to the boy's level. "Hey buddy, I'm Marcus. What's your name?" The father answered, voice tight with anxiety. "This is Cameron. I called about membership, but I wanted to check first if the environment would be suitable. We've had some bad experiences at other gyms." Marcus looked up at the father and saw himself from 2 years ago. That same exhaustion, that same desperate hope mixed with expected disappointment. "Cameron," Marcus said gently, "you see that girl over there with the clipboard? That's my daughter Emma. She runs this place better than I do. Why don't you go ask her to show you around?" Cameron's face lit up and he ran toward Emma, his father watching with tears in his eyes. "Thank you," the man whispered. "That's what we do here," Marcus replied. As the sun set through the skylights, Marcus watched his gym fill with people who'd been told they didn't belong somewhere. People who'd been kicked out, looked down on, dismissed. Now they were here, lifting together, sweating together, building strength that went deeper than muscle. Tony clapped him on the shoulder. "Not bad for a guy who got thrown out of a gym. Not bad at all. If this story touched you, if you've ever been made to feel like you don't belong, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Drop a comment telling me about a time someone gave you a second chance. Subscribe to the channel because we've got more stories of people who refuse to stay down. And share this video with someone who needs to hear that their struggle matters, that their fight is worth it, and that sometimes the people who save us come from the most unexpected places. Thank you for watching until the end. You're the reason we keep telling these stories. See you in the next one.